Let us talk about money, not the cost of the computer itself, but something most people never think about: the operating system. When you buy a pre-built computer, the cost of Windows is baked into the price. You never see it as a separate line item. But if you have ever built your own PC, you know that moment of sticker shock when you realize you need to drop over $100 just for the privilege of running Windows. It is a hidden tax on computing that we have all just accepted as normal. Now consider the Mac side of things. Apple's ecosystem has an even more dramatic price spread. You can get started with a Mac Mini for around $600, but if you want a fully loaded Mac Pro, you are looking at $7,000, and that's before you start adding displays or other peripherals. The operating system comes included, sure, but you are paying a premium for the hardware that runs it. This is where Linux completely flips the script. The operating system costs nothing, not $30, not a subscription fee. Nothing. You download it, you install it, you use it. This is not just about saving money on a single purchase, though that matters enormously for people on tight budgets. It is about challenging an assumption that most of us did not even know we were making: the idea that an operating system is something you pay for is actually a relatively recent invention in the history of computing. Linux returns us to a different model entirely, one where the foundational software that runs your machine is not a product you buy, but a shared resource you join for schools, nonprofits, and anyone building multiple machines. These savings compound quickly, but even for individual users, there's something liberating about knowing your operating system is not a recurring expense waiting to happen. Let us talk about something that might actually make you a little angry once you understand it. When Windows 11 came out, Microsoft drew a line in the sand. Your computer needed a fairly recent processor and something called a TPM chip, which is basically a security module. If your machine did not have these things officially, you were out of luck. Now there are workarounds, but the message was clear. Microsoft decided that perfectly functional computers, machines that could easily handle everyday tasks, were no longer welcome. Apple takes a different approach, but the result is similar. If you want MacOS, you have exactly one choice for hardware: you buy a Mac. That's it. Apple is the sole manufacturer. You cannot shop around for a better deal. You cannot build your own machine. You cannot upgrade individual components. Over time, you are locked into their ecosystem entirely, and they set the prices. This is where Linux offers something genuinely different. Linux does not care what computer you put it on: that old laptop from 2012, sitting in your closet. The one Windows abandoned, Linux will probably run on it. In fact, it might run better than the original operating system ever did. There are lightweight versions of Linux specifically designed to breathe new life into older hardware. The practical impact here is significant. With Windows or MacOS, you are essentially on a treadmill: keep buying new hardware or get left behind. With Linux, you decide when your computer is obsolete, not some corporation in Seattle or Cupertino. A 15-year-old machine can still be useful for web browsing, word processing, even media playback. That's not just about saving money, though it certainly does that. It is about reducing electronic waste and getting full value from the products you have already purchased. If you spend any time in programming communities online, you will notice something interesting. When someone asks which operating system they should use for coding, the answers almost always lean the same way. A recent discussion on Reddit captured this perfectly. A casual programmer was switching from Mac to Windows and kept seeing the same advice. Everywhere, people said that MacOS and Linux were simply superior for development work, But nobody really explained why. The answer goes back further than you might expect. In the early 1970s, two researchers at Bell Labs named Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie created something called Unix. This operating system became the foundation for how programmers interact with computers. Linux and MacOS both grew out of this Unix tradition. Windows took a completely different path. What this means in practice is that when you open a terminal on Linux, you are stepping into an environment that was designed for programmers from the very beginning. The command line tools feel natural, they work together seamlessly. They follow consistent patterns that have been refined over 50 years on Windows. The command prompt has a different history. It works certainly, but it often feels like you are speaking a slightly different dialect. Programmers describe it as being a bit different, and that small friction adds up over thousands of hours of work. Web development especially benefits from this Unix heritage. The servers that run the internet mostly run Linux. Developing in an environment that matches your production environment means fewer surprises when you deploy your code. The programming ecosystem on Linux reflects this reality. Package managers let you install development tools with a single command. Languages like Python, Ruby, and Node.js often work more smoothly out of the box for programmers. Linux is not just an operating system, it is a natural habitat built by developers for developers over decades. There is something fundamentally different about how Linux is built compared to Windows or MacOS. And I am not talking about features or interface design. I am talking about philosophy. When you use Windows or MacOS, you are essentially trusting a corporation to do the right thing behind closed doors. You have no way to verify what the system is actually doing. Think about that for a moment. The operating system controls everything on your computer. It manages your files, your network connection, your camera, your microphone, and with proprietary systems like Windows and MacOS, that code is a trade secret. You cannot look at it, you cannot audit it, you just have to take Microsoft's or Apple's word that nothing shady is happening in the background. Linux works differently. The code is open, anyone can examine it. Anyone can verify what every single line is programmed to do. This transparency creates accountability that proprietary systems simply cannot match. When thousands of independent developers can review the code, there is nowhere to hide malicious behavior or sneaky data collection. This has become especially relevant with the rise of AI features being pushed into operating systems. Windows now has Copilot integrated directly into the system. Microsoft decides when and how these AI tools activate, what data they process, and where that information goes. Users are increasingly finding AI features they never asked for, cannot easily remove, and do not fully understand. With Linux, that simply does not happen. No one is going to force an AI assistant into your system overnight. No one is going to quietly change how your data is handled. The community would notice immediately, raise alarms, and provide alternatives. The open source model means the operating system serves you, not the other way around. You remain in control, because transparency is built into the very foundation of how Linux works. There is a quiet shift happening in personal computing that not everyone has noticed, yet both Microsoft and Apple have started building artificial intelligence directly into their operating systems. And here is the thing, you cannot really opt out of it. Windows 11 has gone further down this road than anyone else. Microsoft has integrated something called Copilot into the core of the operating system. It is not just a simple assistant sitting in a corner. The system now includes Copilot Vision, which can literally watch your screen and analyze what you are doing. There is PC search that uses AI to dig through your files. There is even wake word functionality, meaning your computer is always listening for a command. Microsoft has also introduced a whole new category of machines called Copilot plus PCS. These come with specialized hardware designed specifically to run AI features locally, including things like Recall, which remembers everything you have done on your computer. Apple is moving in the same direction with Apple Intelligence, though according to reviewers at PC Mag, it is not particularly impressive yet. But the intention is clear. AI is becoming a permanent fixture of the MacOS experience now. Maybe you are fine with this. Maybe you find these features helpful. But what if you do not want AI baked into every corner of your operating system? What if you want your computer to simply be a computer without an assistant watching, listening, and analyzing? This is where Linux offers something genuinely different. When you install most Linux distributions, you get a traditional computing experience. There is no AI assistant integrated by default. There is no wake word detection. There is no system watching your screen or cataloging your activities. You can still use AI tools. If you want them, you can install them yourself, but they are not forced on you as part of the base experience. The choice remains yours, and in a world where that choice is increasingly being taken away, that matters more than you might think. Here is something that might seem contradictory at first. Windows runs on roughly 90% of all desktop computers in the world. Linux sits at a tiny fraction of that, barely registering in single digits by any conventional business logic. Windows has won game over, so why would anyone voluntarily choose the losing side? The answer becomes clearer when you flip the question around. What do you actually get when you choose the majority option? You get convenience. Sure, you get compatibility with almost everything, but you also get something else, something that is baked into the deal, whether you asked for it or not. When PC Mag talks about the wide-ranging consequences of choosing an operating system, they are not exaggerating. The choice ripples outward into nearly every aspect of your digital life. Windows and MacOS both come with built-in data collection. They track how you use your computer, what applications you run, even how long you spend in each one. This information flows back to Microsoft and Apple servers constantly. It is not hidden, it is right there in the license agreement you clicked through without reading. Linux users simply opt out of this entire arrangement when you run Linux. Your computer is yours in a way that mainstream operating systems do not allow. There is no corporation on the other end, collecting telemetry, building an advertising profile, or deciding which features you are allowed to disable. The small market share is almost a feature rather than a bug. Linux flies under the radar. It is not worth the effort for most malware authors, and it is certainly not worth the effort for advertising companies trying to track your every move. The trade-off is real. You give up the safety of the herd, but what you get back is something that the majority will never experience: actual ownership of your own machine.